Well, hi everybody. Jeff Cranford.
Yeah, great to be with you.
Talking about street myths. Jeff, golf is a backwards game.
Completely.
I gotta swing down to hit it up.
Yes.
Sometimes I swing low to keep it low. Sometimes I swing up to hit a little more up. That's a lot of contradiction.
Feels like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of complexity to the golf swing in terms of opposites being true. You want to hit it right, swing left. You want to hit it left, swing right. Club face is involved. There's a lot of things involved in that, but it's really complex, and it's very similar in the spiritual life. There seem like, at various points in Scripture, to be massive contradictions, and you hear that on the street all the time.
Yeah, and it scares people.
It does.
They think, oh, I read it this way, then I read it that way. I can't handle this. Forget it.
Yeah.
What do we do?
Well, it's incredibly challenging because the Bible does give us, at first glance, what appears to be contradictions at various points. Am I saved by grace? Of course I'm saved by grace. But then it says our deeds follow us, and that feels like an apparent contradiction at first glance. As you get deeper into it, and the more I spend time in the Word, it's not that I'm just trying to reconcile these things in my mind, because there is a certain cognitive dissonance in my mind, a certain background noise that goes, well, wait a minute, if that's true, how can this be true, and how can that be true? And there are a few mysteries that I'll just never quite fully grasp. It reminds me a little, we've talked about this before, but a little bit about Einstein trying to find the great theory, Stephen Hawking's The Theory of Everything, the movie recently. How do you fit quantum mechanics and the quantum at the quantum level, the very small, with Kepler's laws and all these grand big laws of gravitational forces? The math doesn't work, and so there appears to be a great contradiction there. There are things that are similar to that in Scripture that we're saved, and I'll give you an example. Predestination, the sovereignty of God versus the role that we play. Which is it? We want a definitive answer. Which is it? Sometimes both blend, and from our perspective, they seem like real contradictions. And yet, so there's a mystery in it, but then there are many contradictions in the Bible that if we go a little deeper, we recognize, oh my goodness, it wasn't a contradiction. It was just a deeper understanding of a particular area of Scripture that really took some work. And the Bible commends those who do deep study. It's the privilege of a king to search out a matter. In other words, an apparent view right off at face value, sometimes, well, that's a contradiction. Well, sometimes you have to do your real spiritual due diligence to come to the end of that.
But there are critics out there, guys like Bart Ehrman,
Yes.
who say, well, this don't line up. And what they're trying to do is say, you can't trust the Scriptures.
Yes.
Can we trust them?
Well, it was the very first temptation in the garden, and it's always been the temptation. Satan, the whisperer, the father of lies, always whispers, and this is always has God said? Has God really said that? This has come down through millennia. It's written by a bunch of different authors, a lot of different books, over broad periods of time. You can't trust it. Plus, we have this thing comes down. If I were to whisper to you, and you were to whisper to him, and he were to, and we go around the circle, and it comes back. Now, what do we say? We can't even in 10 minutes get the same story as it moves around. We certainly can't trust this. Well, one of the beauties is that if you base your life, there's a point at which you have to say, like the psalmist says, taste and see that the Lord is good. Sometimes you have to wade through some apparent contradictions, Jeff, to get to it and test it in your own life and apply it, and then you recognize, wow, there was no contradiction. In fact, I did need to hit down for the ball to go up. And sometimes when I tried to hit up on it, I hit it, topped it, and went along the ground. Seems opposite to me, but boy, in practice, in orthopraxy, not just orthodoxy, it becomes apparent that this is true and may appear like a contradiction, but boy, when I applied it, it was a dead center truth.
And it's true as well that when we investigate the volume of manuscripts,
overwhelming,
and the number of errors,
yes,
it's very small, it's very scribal.
Correct.
It has nothing to do with the Scripture that was actually delivered to the original authors.
And one last point, very important point. You got to realize the early church was born and there was no New Testament.
Right.
So one thing that even scholars don't argue is that the Old Testament was codified well in advance of the time of Jesus. And so we can go back to the Old Testament, and the custodians of that text have been the Jewish community, many of which have not seen Jesus as the Messiah yet. Many are. So you can't use that whole line of, well, it's just a big conspiracy and all this. Do what the early church did. If you want to prove Jesus, listen to what he said through the stories, but go by and examine it. And in fact, Jesus said that. He said, if I'm not doing the works of the Father, in other words, all those things that were written about me for hundreds of years, then don't believe in me. So there's many places we can go. Just the word on the street, full of contradictions, not very well thought through.
Right. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
We'll see you next time.